No, I don't. There was a long article
course.
about Barack Obama by one of my mentors. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, black conservative, still alive, 95 years old. And he wrote a piece in which he said a lot of people call people like Barack Obama socialist. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production. Fascism is when the government allows you to own.
I knew you was going to say something. I was ready for it.
Socialism is not government ownership, jackass.
Yourself, because if you just took his definition, he said the government owns the means of production.
And that's not even true.
You can just Google. I just Googled it right now. Like when I first watched it, I was like, hold on. I know that's not the. It says a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned and regulated by the community. What is he talking about? He totally flipped it, lied, and just thought that was okay. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and dissect as much as we can when in regards to Larry Elder at the Breakfast Club. And I got the big homie with me, Mr. E. Wade. He is in the Discord. So if you guys are up to the challenge and you guys want to participate in these conversations, go ahead, join the Discord. But we're going to kind of break this down because I am not kidding with you. When I had to listen to this interview 3 or 4 times to kind of get a little understanding on what information we had to discuss, because it is flying. Misinformation is flying at you like a million times per minute. And if someone's not prepared to kind of really take in the information and kind of go through the information themselves to see if it's true or not, you would just take what he's saying as gospel truth. And sometimes that could be, you know, harming because you don't know what's true or not. And he comes off as someone who is being, or who's trying to be honest and trying to be genuine. But if you know a little history, you can tell that's not the fact. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to let's go ahead and start this video. Like I said, like he's already starting out the gate, just kind of, you know, being disingenuous. So let's go ahead and start this.
Father in the home married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1975. Now 25% of white kids enter the world today without a father in the home married to the mother. And the stats are clear. Even Barack Obama once cited them. If you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. What's happened? In the mid-'60s, with I think the best of intentions, a Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And since then, we have incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. You know, when I say this to people, the pushback I get is, well, there are lots of things that are going on, systemic racism, poverty. Here's the problem. If you look at a young black male aged 10 to 43, that's young to me because I'm 71 years old. A young black man in that demo is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a young white man, same demo. Young black man, real young, 19 and under, the number one cause of preventable death is homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black male. Same demo for whites, the number one cause of preventable death is unintentional deaths. That includes drug overdoses, automobile accidents, drownings. It's not until they get to number 4 that death is the cause. In America, 60% of the shootings, the robberies, and the homicides are committed by black people, often against other black people. Of the homicides in this country, half of them are black victims, almost all killed by other blacks. How do you explain that if it isn't for the absence of fathers? Are you prepared to say black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime? I doubt it. And the go-to reaction often is poverty and systemic racism. Here's the problem.
All right. But before he gets into that, can you guys hear me? I just want to make sure the audio is good before we continue here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So one thing just straight out the gate that I had to look up this information and just to see if he's being honest. Right out the gate, he says Lyndon B. Johnson with the war on crime. Well, we do know that there was other presidents that actually contribute to creating laws and legislation that added onto the war on crime, like Richard Nixon. We have Ronald Reagan. You don't want to call out these individuals that actually caused more harm to this, supposedly war on crime that happened. It's little things like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just want to say, oh, Lyndon B. Johnson, Democrat, he's the one who caused all of this. It's like, no, you got to look at his history, especially this topic, in its context, because it's a lot of legislation and a lot of laws that stack on to each other and will make situations like welfare, the situation that happened like it did. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and let me be quick so I can give Dr. Jackson time to speak too. Yeah, but I would go further than you
Okay.
and say that if Larry was really candid about any of this, he would be criticizing this entire system. His issue would be with the state directly. So he would eventually have to confront like I've said plenty of times, he'd have to confront the very anti-blackness of this state. The same anti-blackness that seeps from the state into our institutions and systems, i.e., what gives you systemic racism in the first place.
Well,
So,
I'm pretty sure you watched this. He doesn't believe in systemic racism. And with him being a Republican running for president, it wouldn't be in his best interest to point out the entire system. He has to make it to where it's just the Democrats. Like, it's not really Republican. It's really just the Democrats. And it started with the Democrats. And they're the reason why X, Y, and Z is happening to black people. Democrats are the reason why there's no fathers in the homes. That's essentially what he's alluding to. You know what I'm saying? But what you're saying is, if he really wanted to challenge the system, he would have to point out the entirety of the system, and that includes Republicans.
yeah, that includes, it includes Republicans, includes both major parties. It includes every aspect involved, even corporate interests, special interests, etc. He'd have to point out all of this.
Got you,
So,
but of course he doesn't want to do that, because he'd be going against his own party, and he has a book coming out, so that would do him no good. You know what I'm saying? He has to keep the money coming in, so he's not willing to actually fight the entire system like he wants, like he's pretending to. Is that a fair analysis?
definitely.
Miss Kim, did you want to add in?
I just want to say I just want to ask a question.
Yeah.
So, and this question you probably already know the answer to it, but just for the sake of discussion, why would he question something that has benefited him?
In what terms?
So, let me give you an example, okay?
Yeah.
Superior, if you were a person who worked in a grocery store in a deep freezer section, right?
Yeah.
And you did that for 25 years, right?
Uh-huh.
One would say over time that a freezer wouldn't feel as cold to you anymore, correct?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay. So if E-Wade came around, this is his first day in the freezer. He's never had to work in a freezer before a day in his life. Then he would probably be, golly, it's cold,
Yeah.
and complain every day, right? And he probably wouldn't be properly clothed as he should be, because, you have to learn if you've never worked in a deep freezer before,
Yeah.
right? So if one day someone decided, we could eat was ice cream from a deep freezer, right? That's all that we could eat. Who would benefit more?
Well, definitely the myself, who's actually been in that environment for years and years.
Right. So it's years and years you've been in this environment. An opportunity has come for you to survive, and for E-Wade to not survive. And he
Yeah.
would say, "Oh, well, that's your business. I've been in a deep freezer, so oh well." And the reason why I use that example is because this person has been working within a deep freezer for a long time, and he's been eating ice cream out of it for a long time to come.
Yeah.
And he's basically saying to everyone else, just because you can't eat ice cream because you're too cold is your problem,
Yeah.
right? So
That's
why would
true.
I continue so why would I speak against something that has supported me? Okay. I get on, I wear blackface, and this blackface, and I tap dance for them whenever I get ready, and I get rewarded. And I've been rewarded over and over and over again for my backward ideals and systems. You're not going to question a system that benefits you.
Oh yeah,
It's not
definitely.
benefit you, right? Because he's not benefiting in the way that he should, right? And the way that he benefits is not going to help us. Now, remember, in it, he kind of said that this is something how he wants to help us realize, you know, that we need to be on the other team, so to speak, and we need to do this and that. But his reality is completely different than everybody else,
Oh yeah.
because I'm willing to bet that even though you have the greatest survival skills of a person in a deep freezer, you will have nothing on someone who works outside all day long in 115-degree weather.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it reminds me of uh Clarence Thomas, when he finally, fulfilled his dream with getting rid of affirmative action. But when it came to realize he's a benefactor of affirmative action, so why would he want to get rid of something that he wouldn't be in a position he's in now if it wasn't for affirmative action and things like that? When black folks do things like that, kind of like what you said, like they feel like they need to tap dance and sing for these elite white folks. And the best way to do that is to try to separate yourself from other black people. Be like, oh, those black folks, I'm not like them. Those are the ghetto ones. And like Larry Elder would probably say, the ones that, came up in fatherless homes, now they're committing all these crimes, and they're not tamed civilians. You know what I'm saying? I'm not like them. You know what I'm saying? So that's who he's trying to appease to, is white folks and other black like-minded people who feel like they're not like the other black folks. You know what I'm saying? So when you're in that position, it's easy for you to say the things that he's going to say and not even bat an eye about it, which surprises me. Like it's really frustrating, like hearing someone like this being able to skew history in such a way to where it fits his narrative. You know what I'm saying? It has a little truth, but if you say in a certain way, it will sound condemning to black people. And even Charlamagne will call him out here real soon. Like, why does it feel like you're only calling out black people in a negative way? And his answer is weird. Like he can't even answer that. So let's go ahead and continue, and let's talk about
40,
this.
when there was blatant racism. This is before Brown versus Board of Education, before the Civil Rights Act of '64. KKK was still alive and well. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Now it's about 14%. You can't blame it on poverty. You can't blame it on racism. It is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and neither side is talking about it. The left doesn't talk about it because they caused it with the welfare state, and our side does not talk about it because if you're white, you'll be accused of dissing single moms who are heroically raising these kids, or you'll be accused of being a racist, or if you're black, you'll be accused, as I was by the LA Times, of being the black face of white supremacy. Nobody's talking about that. I am.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, first off, like I said in plenty of videos, there is people other black folks who are having this conversation and not being disingenuous like he is. So I hate when people say, we need to start the conversation. Like, they've been having this conversation before I was even born. I'm sure. You know what I'm saying? We don't have the Dr. Cornel West's for no reason. You don't think he was having this conversation, exceeding me? So it's like, one, let's go ahead and nip that in the butt. Second, when he says, when Lyndon B. Johnson, with the whole welfare thing, is the reason why we have fatherless homes and poverty doesn't play a part in that. Why can't it be both plus more? Like, one thing that I learned from the debate with Sam Cedar and Actual Justice Warrior, he said something that was pretty decent. He said, if you're tearing down the house and you take out a couple of support beams in that house, the house will still stand. You knock a few of them, it'll still stand. But if you knock more than what you need, as essentially that house is going to fall with little to no effort. So you have to be careful what structure beams that you take out when you're demoing a house. So same with society, the same with a community. If you take out enough support beams in that community, it's going to fail. So with poverty, with the lack of funding from the government, with mass incarceration and other situations that would take a father out the home, because I'm black myself. I grew up around black folks. Dads are not just leaving the house just because. It's reasons behind that. It's not just, they just don't want to raise their kids. That seems to be the stereotype. But in the 60s and 70s, 80s and 90s, it was reasons for that I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to talk about, like mass incarceration, drugs being put in purposely into black communities. Like, that has an effect on households. But he just made it seem like, yeah, Democrats offer welfare, the dads left the homes, and now that's it. It's like, no, you got to look at history in its entire context to really get a full answer. Mr. E. Wade?
Yeah, you beat me to saying all that.
Nah, go ahead. I know you got something extra.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, well, all that you said about mass incarceration, the CIA engaging in the bullshit with the black community in terms of breaking our black solidarity with drugs in the communities, with just and also attacks on any attempts at any economic self-determination.
Yep.
Like, talk about any of the Black Wall Streets, even though they were capitalist in their structure. Yeah, but like, you're gonna have to go beyond that capitalist shit anyway. And we'll probably talk about that later. But you talk about, like I said, the Black Wall Streets. You talk about the towns. Like, you talk about what Central Park used to be a black community. It was called Seneca Village. You had Rosewood in Florida. I mean, you had all different types of black ecosystems that were attacked by what? The racist state itself. So all of this is literally why, as black people, we should reject the state.
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
Of the legacy between slavery, Jim Crow, black codes, all this, between all the attacks that have happened. I mean, at some point, there's got to be a real rejection here of the state itself, not participating in this red-blue game that is controlled by a racist capitalist system where both parties are bought up by the same groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
That just tokenizes anything you're doing. So by virtue, Larry is just another token, just like Vivek or any other person of color. Need I say more?
Miss Kim?
Well, I was gonna say, he was just talking about the 60s and 70s and about fatherless homes. I mean, that didn't start in the 60s and 70s. Really, the breakup of the family started at the beginning of slavery, separating
Ooh.
from their children, from mothers, being sold off, um, becoming the man that enters into the slave's household and sleeping with their wives, and you know, having children by them, and so selling their children off, selling the males off for the highest price to other people, and separating their fathers from them when something bad happened, or something happened where someone was killed, or they were raped, or they were lynched. Because we don't talk about how our males were raped as well, not
Yeah.
only just lynched and slaughtered, and their feet cut off and their hands cut off, to where they couldn't even work for their own families and do things for themselves. So when you say it's just the 60s and 70s where we have fatherless homes, I'm skeptical, because you don't know our history. It was built on us not being together, of us
Mm.
not being a one circuit. And okay, and I'll push it a little further. And you guys correct me at any time, because you guys are male. I would dare to even say, even in the early 50s and 60s, where you had like this nuclear family kind of thing, that even then there was this pressure of a Black man not being able to provide fully for his family, because he did not have the financial impact, nor did he have the circumstantial power, or even the ability to do more than what the white man allowed him to do, due to
Mm.
Jim Crow and other systemic type of racist type of practices. So, or institutional practices in themselves, because even then you couldn't do certain things without the approval of someone in power, and the person in power was a white man.
Mm.
And so even that compressed being able to be this quote unquote nuclear system. Okay. And then precedent even further. So when a Black man back then, if you think old school, they can't provide for their families in the way that they should, it created stress, it created mental health issues and things like that that they didn't talk about. And then it created all these other things that cause trauma in our systems, such as abuse, such as when people had mental health disorders, they didn't have any treatment. And then you had had women trying to be able to take care of their families because their men couldn't, or they left, because there are plenty of stories that old school people would tell you where the men just left the homes because they didn't feel like a man, because they
Yeah.
could not provide for their families. The boot of the white man has always been on the Black man's neck from the time they stole him from Africa. So for him to say it's just then, you don't really know your history, sir. And so that's really problematic for me. And when I was telling you earlier about a system, white supremacy has benefited him, because he is the person that is continually perpetuating that system.
Yep.
And because he does it, he is rewarded by them. It's like a dog that continues to get a treat for bad behavior. So,
So I'm glad I'm really glad that you brought that up, because in this one song by Lecrae, he's a Christian rapper, he even mentioned that, and I'm glad that you said it, because he was like he just kind of paraphrasing, but he even mentioned, he was like, being a deadbeat dad, that was taught way before my time. You know what I'm saying? Like this has been happening to Black families, like you said, like when they stole us from Africa. You know what I'm saying? So like this is not something new, and then all of a sudden a Democrat, just wanted to destroy Black families. Like Black folks been trying to get this straight since day one. You know what I'm saying? And then, like you say, especially back in the 50s and 60s, where segregation was still kind of, implemented. How can you take care of your family properly if you don't have purposely, if you can't get opportunities, if all that you have available is low paying jobs, if all that's available is communities that's being torn down and not properly taken care of by, supposedly a government. I'm pretty sure E-Way could debate that, but essentially how a government is supposed to run is supposed to take care of its citizens. Like, how can you take care of your family? So when the government does offer food stamps or welfare to these women, of course they're going to take it because they're not getting opportunities elsewhere. So it's almost like a weird trade-off. But Mr. Larry Elder just wants to blame it on the black women's decision. Oh, they just want free food. It's like, I'm pretty sure if the man in the house was able to provide properly for his family, they would have turned that down, because it's not like they got rich off of it. It's not like you can spend that money on houses and private jets and no, it's just food. You're not going to be you're not going to live off of that. So I'm pretty sure if the husband, if the man could have taken care of his family properly, they would have denied the food stamps or the welfare. So once again, it's just a weird, he knows the history, but he's just using it in a way to bolster up his talking points, and that's it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it just goes to testament that it just goes to show that, and this is something I wish Breakfast Club was much better at. I get it. It's just, bro, y'all have this platform, y'all need to be better at this type of shit. Come on, I'm just some random and I can critique it better than Breakfast Club did. That's kind of pathetic, all things considered. And look, at the end of the day, Larry is basically a product of the system. In we technically have 3 variations of white supremacy: black tokenism, white proximity, and OG white based racism.
Yeah.
So he fits the token.
Yeah, if the shoe fits, huh?
Yeah, and it's just bro, if anything, the things you're talking about, the welfare and all this shit, all these social programs are reforms, right? They're reforms because FDR was scared of real revolution between the two socialist parties, a communist party, and labor. So yeah, and even anarchists in there too. but still, those things like public parks, library, all this stuff that we have as public services and public goods are concessions to preventing real revolution.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, now we're getting to a point where this capitalist system is breaking down so much that you got some. I don't know if you saw the Alabama mom video where she's just dude, I have 2 grown kids. They can't even live functionally on their own because they don't make enough.
Yeah.
And we've broken down the system so much now. Now we got people who idealistically I wouldn't think would complain about it are now saying something. I'm yeah, we know shit is getting real now, huh? We know this system is breaking down in front of everybody's face.
You ain't lying.
But then black folks. Oh, my bad.
No, go ahead, Kim.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you had stopped, and then I was going to say something.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to... Let me also point out another fact. The welfare system is actually a copycat, right? because the idea of giving out food and stuff like that to poor mothers came from the Black Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
They just took it and ran away with it. So if you're trying to say who really started the idea of the welfare system, it really didn't have anything to do with mothers getting money to do X, Y, and Z, and so on, so on, so. It was about providing food for starving children.
Yep. Yep.
None of that. None of that is mentioned at all. He just sat up there with that face that he making on this video right now. That look like he ate 10,000 lemons. and just skipped all of these facts. And he came out there just headstrong and wrong. Oh Lord. But anyway, I'm sorry, Iwe, go ahead.
Let's continue the video, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna have a lot to talk about. Because like I said, like the entire interview is just nonsense.
I was just gonna mention my bad. I was just gonna mention real quick. Like, this is part of the reason why you need black radicals on these shows. Could you imagine me sitting across from Larry Elder?
Hey, I would pay for that. I mean, I ain't got a lot of money, but I would pay for it.
I'm just like, I'd look at him in his face, and go, dude, you know the history, bro. I'm gonna call you out. I can't have you doing this shit, bro. Like,
yeah. All right, let's go ahead and continue.
What are the reasons? If your statistics are right, what are the reasons that you think fathers aren't in the home?
As I said, it's because in the mid-'60s, Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. In Charlemagne, literally, they sent social workers door to door in the inner city. I remember this, advising women of the availability of welfare provided there was no man in the house. It created an economic incentive for women to marry the government. Same thing with whites. In 1965, 8% of whites entered the world without a father in the home married to the mother. Now it's about 25%, also up threefold. Look at census data, 1910, 1920, 1930, in places like Milwaukee, Chicago, Philadelphia, a young black kid was slightly more likely to be brought into a world with a father in the home married to the mother than a young white kid. We have incentivized this kind of bad behavior, and it's had a disproportionately bad effect on the black community.
Let me ask you a question. What do white people do wrong, Larry Elder?
What do you mean, what do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is.
All right, that's a. So my question to you guys is, why would Charlemagne feel prompt to ask Larry Elder, what do white people do wrong? Because that's not a normal question you would just ask anyone. Like, can you tell me what white people do wrong? My short answer is clear and it's obvious. If someone's prompted to ask you, what do white people do wrong? You have to be saying something. You have to be portraying something to people to get them thinking that you are not for black people. And it's weird because if you looked at his face when Charlemagne asked him that, he didn't even bat an eye. Like, does he not know? Like, black folks as a whole do not receive people like Larry Elder with open arms. And it's funny to me because I will see some, especially in this video in the comments, some people are like, this is the conversation we need to have. Larry Elder, he was brave for going on. It's like, but do you not understand who he is and what he's trying to put out there? He's not trying to have this conversation in good faith, because if it was in good faith, he would sound like a Cornel West. You know what I'm saying? But it's something about his delivery that prompted Charlemagne to say, what do white people do? Mr. Eway?
Oh yeah. And it just goes to show for someone like Charlemagne or anybody or any really black person who's apolitical. Not saying Charlemagne is, but really, if you put any apolitical person in Charlemagne's seat, that would probably be a question that would come up.
Well, yeah,
Because
knowing
it'd be like,
Charlemagne is.
because it might not come out that way. It might come out like, bro, what the hell? Like, I'd be like, bro, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, what? You only criticizing us, but yet you got a lot of these white people that have worse history than we do.
Oh yeah,
And so it's like between this capitalist class that's white, that's a white capitalist class in their army of multicolored petty bourgeois like Larry Elder, for example, and Vivek Ramaswamy. Fuck. Like it's frustrating to deal with people like this because some people do get seduced by this, and it's been because of like how often do we really discuss black radicalism at all? I mean, we don't even discuss the full legacy of Dr. King. Dare you bring up Fred Hampton in a public school, or Paul Robeson, or
well, that's not gonna happen.
Or A. Philip Randolph, or W.B. Du Bois, or Malcolm X, or any real black revolutionary in some capacity. And instead, we're presented with Negroes like Larry Elder.
And if Charlemagne had his numbers in front of him, and if Larry Elder was being genuine with his conversation, because it seems like he has by memory all the stats of everything that black folks do wrong. Like he has it down to a science, okay? But if he wanted to be genuine, and he's running for president, I don't know how serious that is. He's going to be the president of all people. So you would think he would have these statistics for all people. Like for white folks, in 2017, the FBI reported almost identical figures. 80% of white victims were killed by white offenders. 88 for black victims were killed by black offenders. Those numbers are pretty daggone close. It's not like a huge disparity or huge gap in between those numbers. Usually people kill in proximity. They usually commit crime in their area. Yeah. So it's like that's not anything revolutionary. That's not new information. This is old. But if, like I said, if he was being genuine, he would have cited those numbers. Be like, yeah, crime is a problem overall. But no, he just wants to be kind of specific on black crime. And that's it. That's all he seems to be worried about in a disingenuous way.
Without any real rebuke of the state. Not
exactly.
Not that he'd have any willingness to do that. Because that would mean he would have to rock his own Apple Card. He wouldn't be able to just sit up there and be the convenient black token for this two-party system at all.
Exactly.
Whether it's Larry Elder, Jim Clyburn, Barack Obama, whoever it is at this point. All these black tokens need to be called out.
Go ahead.
That's what I was going to... And again, I still ask you the same question. Why would I speak against my own benefits? Why would I do that? Would I speak against a system that has benefited me? He's not going to do that. He is a safe alternative, and he wants to make sure he stays in the square of safety so he doesn't say too much to get him kicked out of the apple cart, as you said. So he's going to stay there. I'm also point out something to you about Charlemagne. I don't particularly like him at all, or DJ Envy, and but because I find him to be very messy at times. But if you look at DJ Envy's face when they switch the camera, and you look at Charlemagne's face, these people do not like him. And they hate having to interview him. And you could tell that they did not want to interview him. And I think that's why they didn't have everything all up to date and all of that. That lady that's on the screen is well more versed than they are. They really don't want to give him the time a day. I think he asked that question to be um an adversary, you know what I'm saying? Or
Yeah.
to be someone who wanted to rock the boat to make him some. I mean, anybody who wants to rock the boat, Charlemagne is the person to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he asked the question to see what he would says. Because you're right, he's well read, he sounds like a scholar, but he doesn't want to mention the things that are really true.
Exactly. And like I said at the beginning of this or in the intro, I think someone like an Larry Elder, if he wasn't as old, like imagine someone just like this, but in their 20s, in their 30s. I honestly, in my opinion, today, I think that's probably the biggest threat to black people. Like
That's scary.
police,
That's
police, okay, we know who they are. We can see the police coming a mile away. Systematic racism, okay, I think as black folks we have a pretty decent understanding of that. But when it comes to black folks who are purposely trying to support white supremacist talking points, that can only cause more harm than good, like that's a threat, because they look just like us. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, well, you know, if this black person says that, then it must be true. You know what I'm saying? I could just imagine how some of these, you know, racist, bigoted white people listening to Larry would think. Like, see, I knew it was true. He can't be lying. He's black. Why would he say that if he's black? So it has to be true. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, folks like this, I think that's a harder threat than, you know, police brutality.
True.
absolutely.
Yeah, and back to that point about, well, really about the state. It just gives people the permission just to think whatever they want and assume that he's speaking. Again, we don't have any HNICs. We don't have head Negroes in charge in the black community like that.
No, not no
No
more.
one, shit. No one black person speaks for all of us. Hell no. So those races already operating on the fact that they're anti-black anyway. So any justification is good justification to them.
Yep.
It's why, like, ultimately, it's why black excellence as a whole needs to be redefined outside of this capitalist framework that it is currently in. Because you can't define your excellence based in a system that's antithetical to your own existence. Like, for real?
All right, let's go ahead and continue.
I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe this?
No, there used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is.
Check this out.
Oh man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important one you think.
But at the top of mind, I'll probably maybe say mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family. There's a direct.
I'm not going to.
What is he talking about?
What the hell
that doesn't even come close to answering Charlemagne's question. That's if I was interviewing him, I would throw my papers in the air. I'd be like, I am done with this. I am not going to waste my time with someone who is not going to even challenge what Charlemagne said, mass incarceration. I thought that was a pretty solid answer. You know what I'm saying? Like you say, he's a radio guy. You know what I'm saying? But for him to be like, you know what? Mass incarceration. And then Larry says, well, you know, back in the, 1950s, poverty was like 80% for black folks. There was no mass. It's like, but do you know what led up to mass incarceration? That was, hold on, let me pull this up. It went from in 1980, 5,000 people in prison to in 1997 to 400,000 people. You think all that happened because of fatherless homes? You don't think maybe a system that was disproportionately targeting black people caused those numbers to rise? 2.6 times black folks were 2.6 times to get arrested and harsher jail sentences than white people. That sounds like a system to me. I don't get it. Like, and like E-Way said, I'm just a regular guy and I know this. I didn't even go to college and I know this. So why is Mr. Elder trying to pretend like he doesn't know this himself? And well, I mean, we know why, but like, you know, people are just going to take what he says and be like, oh yeah, that has to be true. Like, no.
Let me challenge him. That's the thing. You wanted Charlemagne to actually challenge him and actually spit the facts to him. See, I expected DJ Envy or somebody to say that, but they didn't say anything. And they just allowed him to go on.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
What I was about to say was, I know Larry keeps bringing up this freaking point about the nuclear family. In regard to nuclear family, it wasn't talking about black family, jackass. They were talking about protecting the greater nuclear white family in terms of inheritance. Marx makes this point with base and superstructure, basically. When he talks about the superstructure being part of the superstructure is what? Family. So to maintain the base of capitalism, what do? What do you think inheritance is? It maintains that channel of wealth. It keeps that family wealthy.
Which was not created for black folks.
Exactly. That's why you can call this a racist capitalist system, because the wealth that is inherited was expropriated from the surplus value of black labor during slavery and even in New Age slavery and in mass incarceration.
So you're saying,
Wade, you better teach.
So what you're telling me, Mr. E-Wade, is the system that Mr. Elder keeps referring to was not established for him. It was not established for black folks, and evidence of systemic racism is that actually system that he's trying to defend.
And the only reason there's even part of that supremacy is black tokens, or really any tokens of any race, is because it's basically to pit our people against ourselves so that we don't stand up and break this damn system down.
Absolutely.
That's the only reason why there's even a multicolored, or what I like to call a rainbow petty bourgeoisie, that the white capitalist class allows to exist as a weapon against the proletariat of color ourselves. Shit.
Damn. All right, let's continue.
I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children, and I'm a happily married black man to a black woman. So I'm never going to argue with that part, you know. But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this and black people do that. And when I ask you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was a black. And I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent...
All right, let me go ahead and skip to the next time stamp. But it's weird because I could have swore he just said he was a black. Like, I don't know if he just misspoke. I know we all can misspoke, but I don't know. That just sounded a little weird to me. He was a black. Like, I don't know, man, but I'll let that one slide. Let's go. All right.
Create these systems that are our systems, and we are the entrepreneurs. It seems like white supremacy finds a way to destroy it.
Every time. Look, the Tulsa massacre, within about 5 years, that whole area was rebuilt. It was not even called the Black Wall Street until after it was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt, by the way, by black people without one dime of government money.
Yeah, but who destroyed it to begin with?
It was racists who destroyed it. No question about it.
Sure.
We've had race riots, but so have Japanese.
So you do agree that there's racism? I'm just so confused.
You know, I never even came close to saying. I never came close to saying there was no racism.
You just saying you don't think it's systemic racism?
Not anymore. Obviously, there was. We had something called slavery. We had something called Jim Crow.
That destroyed black. Hold on, sir. That was system that destroyed. That was the system that destroyed Black Wall Street. It's the same system right now that's not even wanting to pay those same living descendants. Because I know your position on reparations, but those same living descendants of Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And then you move, and then you go on to say that the system, the quote unquote system, is also trying to destroy President Trump. So I'm just so confused on: do you believe that the system can destroy or not? You pick and choose, sir, and that's what's so confusing to me. You just said it wasn't racism. Now it is racism. When it was time to build it back, there was no racism.
I said it wasn't systemic racism. Let's talk about.
So what are you just hung up on the word system?
Can I just make this point, Charlamagne, please? Let's take Chinese Americans.
All right, but before he gets into this weird, once again, not answering the question, but he just kind of wants to, once again, make black folks look like we're just the most, like animals or whatever. Two things. When it comes to Tulsa, Black Wall Street, Black Wall Street essentially was really Black Wall Street because of segregation. Like, black folks had to live in an area, and in Tulsa they made the best of it. Now, when it comes to the naming of Tulsa, from what I gather, it was Booker T. Washington who coined that phrase first. So I'm not sure if he's right when he said it was named after the fact, but I just love how he just kind of glossed over, like, it was burnt down, but like they rebuilt it back, 5 years later. Like, wait, don't you know that successful black businesses were burnt down for no reason? Over 300 people were killed and just buried in random places. But it was just built back, not to its original state, obviously. But he just, I just hated when he just kind of glossed over it like it was nothing. Like, yeah, they rebuilt it, so what's the problem?
But here's the other part though that pissed me off when I watched this. When he's talking about this, I'm looking at him like, Larry, no, say the rest, motherfucker, say the rest. Because here's the thing. How did it get destroyed? By a bunch of white supremacists, right? Who were given a permission slip and basically deputized by the state itself. They were deputized.
Yep.
Those white supremacists that did that were deputized. So, as if as black people we need even more reasons to be against the state. There's yet another one. Racists can be deputized by the state, and the state can co-opt their rage and turn it against us and break our solidarity and break our structures. For there are structures that exist that are pure survival now. Keep in mind of that as well. So, for Larry to sit there and pontificate like this is disgusting. Like, dude, you really, like, this is why, like, it frustrates me about, like, the Breakfast Club itself, because you don't have people who are as knowledgeable. Like, Tesla's decent and it's decent, but we really need more black anti-capitalists in mainstream. And it's so frustrating. Like, we don't have enough of this radical energy to combat tokens like Larry. It's so
go ahead, Ms. Gill.
Well, I remember I mentioned to you earlier how over these people are. Does you see DJ Envy's face?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he didn't even want to entertain him because this man thinks he's too much better to be on this too big and too better to be on this show with other black people anyway. So I'm gonna tell you something I don't personally like. Okay. When you operate from a And one of the big beliefs is that women shouldn't have any say so, and they have a place.
Yeah.
So when he started to, I hate a mansplainer. Don't do that. So he tried to ignore her. And not only did he try to ignore her, he turned to Charlemagne and
I
said,
noticed that.
I answered Charlemagne, and skipped all over her because he could not match wits with her because she's ready for him, right? She asked him hardcore questions throughout this interview, all of which he skipped. He skipped over or left words out. You right. Eway didn't tell the whole story, didn't conclude the whole historical context of things because he wants to rewrite the narrative of what actually happened in history. It's like DeSantis being on a black television show about slavery. So,
oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna tell you something else I did not like. I don't like when you said we needed radical people to be. Let me tell you why you won't get that very much, because they'll shut that show down.
Yeah.
If you
True, but that's why you could actually. That's why you don't fund that show in particular ways. That's why that show has to be funded differently through real mutual aid and stuff like that. But yeah, like YouTube. Oh yeah, YouTube will like take that down and shit.
Yeah, you can't. Okay, so I went to school with, and I was taught and learned stuff from like Naeem Akbar and Azebo and Kobe Kaban and all these different kind of people who wrote these contexts. You know, I read Even the Rat Was White by Guthrie, and all of these are classic psychological books. If I'm sure most of y'all may be familiar with them, but I'm just saying it just for the context.
Yeah.
So all of those things produce like these radical ideals about Black thinking, right? And about the status of Black people. If you came out with the real stuff, they would not only shut down the television show, they'll come out with something to have people talking about how they're lying. The next thing you know, those people are discredited, and then you'll never hear from them again.
Yep.
Yeah,
and they do it all the time. It's the same thing over and over and over and over and over again.
I mean,
one thing. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just real quick to piggyback on that point. I know, and yeah, I'm gonna bring in Chris Hedges in this somehow, but I know he's talked about before. This lady Ellen Strecker wrote a book about some of the stuff that was going on before with actual, with teachers with a conscience, and it's kind of reflexive of what's happening now, where FBI agents will show up to schools with a list, and what they would do is they would have names. They'd be like, this person out, that person out, this one out, her out, him out. And so they're not only out, but they're blacklisted. And they can't teach again.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah. As if we need more reasons to distrust and despise the state, especially as Black people.
Let me rewind this part here because I love how he mentioned this. And once again, if Charlemagne or if someone was there to kind of press him on this, I would love to hear his answer. Let me see if I can. Let's see.
By Black people without one dime of government money.
Check this out.
Who destroyed it to begin with?
It was racists who destroyed it. No question about it. We've had race riots, but so have Japanese.
So you do agree that there's racism? I'm just so confused.
I never even came close to saying. I never came close to saying there was no racism.
You just said you don't think it's systemic racism.
Not anymore. Obviously, there was.
Okay, that part right there. He said, "Not anymore." There obviously was. My question to him would be, okay, if there was systemic racism, what policies or what traumatically happened because, you know, the systemic racism wasn't just for a couple months. This was decades. I mean, we even go back to slavery. So like this was a long institutional progression of this racism, systemic racism. One, who ended it if it did? And if it did end, like it completely stopped, do you think that there was effects of this racial institution, like when it comes to redlining, when it comes to segregation, taking opportunities away? Don't you know that those institutions has an effect on generations of families? Impoverished areas stay impoverished. Like, did the government like fund these areas dramatically after this systemic racism ended? Like what effects did systemic racism leave, and did we solve it? And I'm pretty sure he would, you know, obviously pivot to something else about fathers leaving the houses or something. But does that make sense to you guys? Like, if it ended, it left a trail of something that hasn't been resolved.
See, if it's me, I'm just gonna straight up. I'm straight up looking at him dead and straight and said, if it really ended, why do we still have the same system that perpetuated the systemic racism in place?
Mm-hmm.
Easy.
Why do we still have the same? Why do we have the same capitalist class? Why do we still have the same elites that benefited from that systemic racism in their maintaining their class status and maintaining their position of dominance over the entirety of the society and entirety of our economics?
Easy.
So why didn't that change? So effectively, you would really be framing it in a way that he couldn't weasel his way out of.
Easily, and he would have to either concede that, okay, systemic racism still exists, because like you say, we didn't change anything. Like the elites at the top, we didn't change any really anything, to be honest. I can't think of anything. Or I want to know, if systemic racism ended, what was the outcome? What was the consequences that this systemic racism left behind? Because obviously it wasn't addressed. And now if someone was to look at Larry Elder's, you know, perspective on black people, you would think we've been living like this forever on purpose. Like, yeah, like black people just can't get it together. Like this is just our history. If someone was to just listen to Larry Elder without context of actual history, you know what I'm saying? Because like I say, I've been around black folks my whole life. Like, we do better. We want better. You know what I'm saying? We're not just having kids and purposely just leaving them just because like we're bored or something. Like, it's history to that. You know what I'm saying? So,
and you have to remember too, like, when it comes to the state as a collective attacking black history, you have take my home state, take the lovely home state of Florida. There's plenty of reasons why they don't want to go and teach black history in fully, because it threatens the interests of the elites. Why? Because guess what? In order to maintain their class status, they have to basically purge that knowledge out. Hell, that's why you have either black radicals, well, people who were radical in some sense anyway, aka who's now part of the black misleadership class, like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, people like that. It's like, bro, with radicals, you either killed them dead, put them in eternal solitary confinement, basically, or you bought them off like you did Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and plenty of others.
Yep.
So what the hell? Like, you did all of that shit, and now with this new generation of kids coming up, that's like, I don't give a fuck about any of that shit you did. I'm gonna ask questions and dig anyway.
Yep.
And as teachers, we're getting blamed, even though as kids are doing it themselves and on their own. Because what they're seeing is not lining up. What they're seeing isn't making sense. That's why, like I said to you, Superior, about some of my students before, reading the Communist Manifesto and like stuff on anarchism on their own. It's like they know that they see what their parents are going through. They're seeing this mess right now. They're seeing this mess with inflation. They're seeing this mess with how people are paid so little and can't actually live. At some point, like Marx and others have cited, capitalism creates its own contradictions and its own critics.
Go ahead, Miss Gill.
Well, I was also going to say that, and I'm from Florida too, so that he's just perpetuating this twisted narrative that he has to keep talking about, because it's not in his narrative. It's not white people's fault. It's our fault for not being able to do certain things to pull ourselves up from our own bootstraps kind of ideology. When in reality, the bootstraps were owned by white people too. So it was hard for him. It would be hard for him to admit certain things, right? Because it would speak against his narrative that he's also paid off from as well. Because, he has to be paid to go out here and to be a good boy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And jump when he's told jump, and get his treats, So, because all skin folk ain't kin folk, and that's just fact.
Simple.
You know what I'm saying? He's one of those examples of those types of people. But anyway, I'm getting away from what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say was when Eway was talking about how these young people, they're not, I don't know how to explain it, but these young people are very different because we've given them choice and opportunity when we haven't had choice and opportunity, right? We had certain things outlined for us and we had to stay within the lines. They don't believe in lines because they believe that there's no glass ceiling and that they can go wherever they want to go because that's what we taught them, right? But it's working against our better knowledge because now they're going to be attacking systems. So if I teach them because remember now, and I'm thinking from a psychological point of view, this narrative that he's given people, it's internalization, right? Yep. That something is wrong with me, and therefore I've perpetuated these things that are wrong in society. And that is the biggest crime of them all. Because now you've got people who may be not as versed, not as supported, not as educated, who don't know how to make those connections, right? And then they go home and believe that they're worthless, and then there'll never be somebody or something unless we do these certain X, Y, and Z kinds of things. And maybe they're in these systems that he is also talking about in negative ways. And they don't feel good about themselves. And then they don't feel good about Black people. And they don't feel good about being in a Black experience. And then we create more Larry Elders.
And we definitely don't need that. And one thing, because I was recording a video earlier about Jordan Peterson, and he was on Fox News talking about why Gen Z is demoralized and why they can't really function in society and all this crazy stuff. And I said exactly what you guys said, and you guys didn't even see the video yet. These young folks, they have access to information now. And unlike my generation where, my parents taught me, hey, you graduate, you get a job, and you work. That's it. You go to college maybe, but you work. And then you work, and then you work until you die. And I'm pretty sure my parents told them that. But with this generation, they don't want that. They don't want to follow in the same lines as their parents because they see what the results of that. They're still, their parents are still living check to check and working 50, 60 hours a week. And I don't blame them. This new generation has access to information and they're going to challenge. So that's kind of important. Let's see. All right, E-Way. So this is probably the fun part right here. So
we get to that part.
This is the fascism part. This is the part where I honestly, the first 2 times I watched this video, I stopped it here because I was done with his answer. I was like, this is not a constructive conversation. Like, after having the conversations with Nat Burner, this is what that reminds me of. I think I have like PTSD of that, because as soon as I heard his answer, I stopped the video. I started doing something else. I couldn't take the disingenuous stuff he was answering in his conversation. So let's go ahead and
I think so. Before you get to that, though, like a little bit past where we're at now, I think this is when he gets to that the whole Marxism point and all that shit.
Okay. All right, let's start.
I think it's around the 15-minute mark he gets into it.
You say that what? Oh, 13 minute?
15.
Oh, 15.
Than the average white household. The average Chinese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. How does that happen? It happens because of a strong belief in family. It is rare for a Chinese American or a Japanese American kid to have a child outside of wedlock, and a strong belief in education and a strong belief in entrepreneurship. These are the kinds of qualities that make people successful.
You can't blame everything on having a fatherless family, right? Because
I didn't say blaming everything.
I know, but that's what you're saying. You're saying a strong community. But
no, you said that's what I just said. I didn't say that.
You talk about the Asian community. Asian community, it's easy for them to get loans for entrepreneurships. It's easy for them to get loans for houses. You look at our community.
Okay.
If you really want to talk about our community, right? You look at the schools in our community. Some of our schools are the worst, right? Would you agree with that? Yes or no?
Absolutely. Which
right?
is why one of the reasons I'm running for president is for school choice.
Also, would you say that it's in our community is
systemic?
It's also in our communities heavy food deserts. There's nothing but fast food places that are just killing and destroing that. Would you say that's true?
Systemic too.
Boy.
You say that's true. I'm just asking a question.
Okay, you said a number of things. I just addressed one of them about loans. Mm-hmm. In 1965, Barack Obama, who was in private practice, joined a bunch of other lawyers to file a class action lawsuit against Citicorp, which is headquartered here in New York. 186 black people were applying for loans for mortgages and didn't get them. And they accused Citicorp of engaging in racism. Mm-hmm. Citicorp said, no, it's not racism. You have poor credit scores, and we want to make sure we get our money back. Obama joined a bunch of other lawyers, and they sued Citicorp in a class action lawsuit. And Citicorp said, okay, to hell with it. Gave them all loans. And they followed them all up. Daily Caller did a few years later. Almost all of them lost their homes. Several of them filed for bankruptcy. One of them even said, when you don't qualify for a loan, maybe we shouldn't get a loan. Well, duh. It wasn't true that black people were not getting loans.
Okay, I'll let it continue, but I just wanted to say I tried to look for this story and I could not find supporting articles or anything to back up his story. So if you guys, during your own time, if you guys can find that for me, I just want to see is what he's saying is true, So
no, actually, I wanted to comment on one part through this that he said. Even and from a teacher's perspective, school choice. School choice as funding for schools is configured right now. Here's the key thing. As funding is configured right now, it's classist. Because here's the thing. Where's the school at?
Yep.
You have these magical things called property taxes. So depending on where the school is at, it's not going to be funded the same way as a school in a nicer community.
Exactly.
So,
E-Wade, he knows that though. That's the weird thing that I have to keep telling myself is he knows this. So why would he? I mean, we know why, but why still? If we know schools are under given opportunities by money because of the taxes in that community. If there's no money in that community, the school is not getting money. So what other options is there?
Commodification of schooling, aka private schooling, which is
Private schooling,
which is what they want to do. They want to privatize the whole system. That's what these assholes want to do. They want to privatize the whole system. Now I get it. Private schooling does predate public schooling historically. But public schooling is a public good. It's not something that's restricted by lack of means or anything like that. It's a general public good.
Oh yeah. I just think if they were properly funded, it's not a guarantee of outcome, but looking at the numbers that I forgot when I was talking to Nat Burner about this, looking up the information when it comes to the schools that were underfunded compared to the schools that were funded very well, it plays a part in the education that's given to them. Like, it's obvious if you look at the numbers. So I just don't understand why the answer can't just be give more funding to these schools. Like, that's a start. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know, like it just feels like they just complicate this more to confuse it so people will just stay out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's just weird because he knows this information, but you know,
yeah,
the lack of knowledge, I guess, is his benefit. So.
Plus, there are all sorts of black-owned community banks around the country, and it turns out the turn-down rate when you apply for a loan at a community bank was even higher because they had less capital and they couldn't afford to loan money to risky people. It is just not the case that the reason for the plight of the black community is because people were not lending money to them. It's just not true.
That's not true. But hold on 1 second, Charlamagne.
What's not true?
You're bringing back facts of 1965, right? Let's talk 2023, right?
I said 1995.
1995. We'll talk 2023, right? My son will be successful in real estate and successful in buying a house. You know why? Because his father owns his house. Because his father owns a house, right? But my father
because of you and the drive, because of you and the drive you put into him,
did not own houses.
Because of you and the drive you put into him.
We're not gonna have a conversation.
You're not even appreciating what you've done to your son.
I'm just asking you a question. I just let you speak and I'll let you talk.
Okay,
I can talk.
We have a conversation.
All right.
But when we talk about it, right, it's harder for our community to get loans, right? And not just because of poor credit scores. It's because of where the areas are. You talked about the Asian community. A lot of the Asian community have their own banks and they're able to process and get their own banks. There's not too many African American branches that are able to give out money. So that's one. Then let's talk about getting grants for schools. They're not even giving grants for schools at the rate that they're giving grants for white people. And let's talk about when they talk about entrepreneurship. They are giving so much money to these white and Asian kids and Asian people doing it, and a 1,000 times less than our community. Will you agree to any of that?
No, I don't. I don't agree with virtually any of what you just now said.
Oh, man.
The turn down rate for a white applicant for a mortgage is higher than the turn down rate for a Japanese or a Chinese applicant for a mortgage. Now, are you telling me that banks are discriminating against white and in favor of Asian Americans? It's because their credit scores are better. They often live below their means. They save more, even when they're making the same amount of money than black people do. If you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. Period. End of statement. Even the head of Urban League, a black man once said that if you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. End of statement.
Sir,
yes.
let's just when you were talking about crime, you weren't prepared to talk about disproportion. You talked about how it was more black people that was doing it, and then you talked about how we're the smaller, of the population. The same applies also to the loans. It's more white people than it is black people. You seem to pick and choose.
I'm talking about the rate. I'm talking about the rate.
Whatever it is, the bottom line is it's more white people than it is black people. And so if more black people are not getting loans disproportionately, it seems you only want to apply the disproportion to the conversation when it benefits your talking point.
I'm not sure you understood.
Which is why they say.
I'm not sure you understood.
No, I understood.
I'm not sure you understood my point. That's why I mentioned in 1995 when 186 black people who were not getting loans filed a class action lawsuit claiming that they were denied the.
Yes, we get it. Like I don't know. It's just weird because I understand the hypocrisy that she was trying to point out. Like he always wants to point out the disparities when it comes to when he was trying to defend Trump and defend white people committing crimes, but then disparities really matter when or don't matter when black people you know, when he's spouting out all the statistics about black folks, is like, yeah, the disparities don't really matter. It's just, you know, just the numbers. You know, black folks just don't know how to act. You know, like, I don't know. It's just frustrating hearing him talk throughout this. Let's see.
Yeah.
All right.
One of the former DAs writes a book, accuses Bragg of giving Donald Trump a pass, and all of a sudden he brings counts against Donald Trump. I think it's unfair.
Do you think members of your party are leaning toward fascism?
Define fascism.
Authoritarianism?
Define fascism.
I mean, the rejection of democracy, the rule of law, and equal rights under the law in favor of a strong man, Donald Trump, who interprets the popular will.
No, I don't. There was a long article about Barack Obama by one of my mentors. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, he's a black conservative, still alive, around 95 years old. And he wrote a piece in which he said a lot of people call people like Barack Obama socialist. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production. Mm-hmm. Fascism is when government allows you to own.
I knew you was going to say something. I was ready for it.
Socialism is not government ownership, jackass. And even if anything, you need to break up what you mean by socialism. There's two different ideas mainly: state-run socialism and stateless socialism. The state-run socialism is what you saw with Russia in 1917. That was the state-run socialism that you saw. What was an early example of communism, right?
Yeah.
It was effectively a state-run socialist system, but when you really looked at it, it was basically state-run capitalism.
So what he said was incorrect.
Yeah, it kept the same structures, it kept the same things in place. It didn't really fundamentally change the system. Oh, it was attempting, and see, this is where I disagree with my communist brothers and sisters about a worker state. Because you want to transition from this capitalist state of a rule by bourgeoisie to a rule of workers, you'd have to acknowledge America's history with dealing with racist sentiments, with dealing with alienating sentiments, like all this other shit, and still you're effectively creating a newer state.
So let me
creating a less shitty state. Now, if I go into, like, when we talk about the stateless socialism, like more so the libertarian socialism, aka the anarchism, like black anarchism, stuff like that, yeah, you're talking about the antithesis of the state. You're saying the state can't be a part of this anymore. The state cannot exist, period. We don't have time for a transition from state to state. Instead, you're going, fuck it. We have to function autonomously, and we need horizontal structures and not more vertical hierarchy where there's a strong man at the top.
So
that's what some of the Panthers were critical of Huey Newton for that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's weird because even and once again, this is why I try to I can't stress this enough in just about every video I do now, is you have to educate yourself, because if you just took his definition, he said the government owns the means of production.
And that's not even true.
You can just Google. I just Googled it right now. Like when I first watched it, I was like, hold on. I know that's not the. It says a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned and regulated by the community. What is he talking about? He totally flipped it, lied, and just thought that was okay. Like, once again, if I was sitting there, I would take my computer and throw it in the air and just walk out. Because, like, how can you look someone like that in the face and just be okay with him just, hey, I'm just gonna lie about this. They don't care. They don't know. They're not gonna know the difference. Like, what do you mean? I can Google this information. It is not that complicated. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why? Why is he doing this? Like, why is he here? Like, what? I just have so many questions.
It's just the fact that when he does that, and like you, I made the terrible decision of going to the comment section of this video, and having to explain to black folks how we are connected to real socialist history because of our ties with the Communist Party of America, with people like Paul Robeson and W.B. Du Bois, and then on top of the fact that we have black socialists, and yeah, Dr. King was a socialist late in his life too, a Christian socialist to be exact.
Yeah.
So if you're really gonna say government ownership of the means of production, you're really using state socialism as the definition of socialism, which isn't true.
Exactly.
It's not the definition, because that was the case. Anarchism wouldn't exist. It's like, bro, like I wish someone like, I know you're still reading Lorenzo's book.
Oh
right?
yeah, yes sir.
If someone like Larry was sitting in the conversation with Lorenzo and said this, oh my God,
it'd be crazy. Now, now to answer his first question, and you know, I'll let him finish what nonsense he's about to speak, because if you don't know, like, you know, he's gonna flip the script and say Democrats are fascists, which, I mean, I'm pretty sure we can kind of agree, like, kind of both of them are pretty trash, and even though one is probably more comfortable with fascism, you know, the Democrat Party is not too far behind. You know what I'm saying? But fascist policies may distinct strategies: the mythic past, propaganda, anti-intellectualism, unreality, heresy, victimhood, law and order, sexual anxiety, appeals to the heartland, and a dismantling of public welfare and unity. What party does that sound like to you? Like, anti-intellectualism, that screams Republican to me. Now, of course, Democrats too, but if you just had to choose one over the other, victimhood, you know, oh, white people are being erased, you know, law and order, sexual anxiety. It seems like, you know, Matt Walsh's, you know, of the world seem to not be able to get off that subject, like, you know, man loneliness and stuff like that. Dismantling of public welfare and unity. Like, I just want to hear how he's going to flip the definition of fascist and flip it to where it's Obama's fault. Cause that's where he's kind of leading. Like, hey, if you want to see a fascist, that's Obama. So let me go ahead and just rewind it a couple of seconds here, and let's see what he has to say.
Interprets the popular will.
No, I don't. There was a long article about Barack Obama by one of my mentors. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, he's a black conservative, still alive, around 95 years old. And he wrote a piece in which he said a lot of people call people like Barack Obama socialist. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production.
Awesome.
Fascism is when the government allows you to own means of production.
Awesome. Who the fuck was calling Barack Obama a socialist with a straight face? Did you read Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act? What socialist do you know would actually have approved a National Defense Authorization Act that basically repeals the 1872 Quasi Comitatus Act? Oh my God. Basically, what Trump used to be able to snatch people off the street, that was from Obama.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
What the hell? And how is that a socialist exactly?
I don't know.
Even my disagreements with my communist brothers and sisters, that's not something they do.
But of course, if you can just put under the umbrella anything that is negative under socialism, it'll scare people. So when people hear socialism, oh yeah, we don't want that, because, you know, everything that's negative they can think of is socialism.
But you know what's a good counter to that?
Huh?
If I'm in this room with him, you know what's a good counter to that? If I go to black people and say, "Hey, bro, do you think as a black community we should have community control over our own community?" That's our version of socialism, bud.
It is.
That's our version of self-determination and self-direction. Through autonomous action. Through our own means. Yeah, that's why you see me use the hashtags Black autonomy, African intercommunalism, community control of the Black community. It's simple points like that I can use to smack him up.
But of course, yeah. and it's weird because he just said he said fascism. Hold on, let me because it's just weird how he mixes up these definitions here.
No, I don't. There was a long article about Barack Obama by one of my mentors. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, a Black conservative, still alive, around 95 years old. And he wrote a piece in which he said a lot of people call people like Barack Obama socialist. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production. Mm-hmm. Fascism is when the government allows you to own means of production, but government tells you what to do.
What the fuck?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
what the fuck? First of all, Thomas Sowell is such a jackass. Like, for him as an economist to really define socialism that way, and then on top of that, your fascism, you dismiss the impact of the state in regard to fascism.
I need to know what books they're reading to get this because the information that I'm retaining is almost like opposite to what they're saying. It's like we have to be living on different universes right now for him to give me that definition.
This is why I'm looking forward. This is why I'm looking forward to what we discussed in Discord. Holy shit!
Because that was weird. It's like he really flipped that. He had, like I told you, when I heard this come out of his mouth, I was like, you know what? I'm done watching this video because it's just too much. It's too much for me to sit here and pause and try to like throughout this whole video, I'm sitting here like taking notes on some of the things I want to talk about. At the 43-minute mark, I had like almost a whole page. I'm like, bro, I can't do this. I'm not gonna do this. I'm too young to try to stress myself out on a video. You know what I'm saying? So it's just weird. Like I just need people to really just educate themselves because, like I say, the average person listening to him is just going to assume he's correct, and that's horrible.
And this is why I get so mad at like people like Phil Scott, because I have some love for Phil Scott. But like, this is part of the reason why I get so mad at him, because you have a platform that can directly rebuke this, and you're not even coming at it from a radical perspective. You're coming at it from this spiritualist perspective that's really archaic as hell in our community. And this traditionalist spiritual perspective that's not the most helpful form of analysis at all.
Yeah.
I should have told you about the time, I told Ty about the time, like, you have motherfuckers wanting me to get kicked out of the damn comments in the premiere. The damn live chat. I'm like, what the hell? Like, if I understand, and this is part of the reason why Black nationalism is an issue. And it's like, I kept saying Black autonomy over Black nationalism. Why? Because we're not going to repeat this. All you did was put our Black ass faces on a structure that was predominantly Eurocentric.
Yeah.
And what the hell are you doing? Like, what the hell are you doing? And instead of going, okay, this system is the issue. This state has been anti-Black since our history in this motherfucking country. But you're gonna do the same thing that would.
I get it.
What the fuck with our people? Like, what the fuck with our people? Like, really? Like, what the fuck?
This is why I needed to unite the Avengers. I guess that's what we can call this Discord, because watching this video for the first time, it feels overwhelming when you have to, and you know, of course, you know, we could kind of blame the Breakfast Club because, you know, they were, you know, highly unprepared or, you know, ill-equipped to fact check like on point. Like you have to be a really knowledgeable individual to fact check in real time. You know what I'm saying? Like no one can Google information quick enough the way that he's just shooting out just nonsense. You know what I'm saying? So I mean like it's hey, we're gonna try to do something. You know what I'm saying? Like that's pretty much all I can think of is, you know, take a couple deep breaths, you know, take a day off and come at this again, because it's just a lot of misinformation, and it almost feels like you have a responsibility to correct it and try to tell as many people as possible. You know what I'm saying? So
this is why I'm so like, this is why I was so happy with your idea of taking back blackness, because again, we cannot allow this racist capitalist system to be used as the framework for what blackness is.
Yep.
To be autonomously determined by us. Our we effectively existed outside the system. We effectively existed within this country, but we've never truly been a part of this country like that. As
That's
our
true.
white counterpart. So why would our blackness be tied to the structures that are antithetical to our existence?
Hey, that's gonna be the headline right there. that sounds good to me. It's impossible. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, this okay. So this video has been or at least recording for 1 hour 35 minutes. I definitely appreciate you guys stepping in and having this conversation, because I try to visualize myself tackling this by myself, and I like I told you, I got overwhelmed, and I really had to take a day off yesterday. Like I wanted to, you know, do the video with you yesterday. I was not in a mental state to do that. I was like literally frustrated. Like this is pointless if this idiot can talk to millions of people with all this false information. Like I can't do this alone. You know what I'm saying? So I had to take a day off. I didn't post no video yesterday. I just had to you know, just be in my happy spot.
You need a sanity break after watching this shit 3 times.
Oh man, it's crazy. But thank you, Mr. Eway. Thank you, Miss Kim, for coming through. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to structure these videos, because like you said, Mr. Ewade, we're going to have conversations regarding taking back blackness and doing it properly. You know, setting the definition that's not entangled with the same system that was built to destroy us. Like it can't work like that. You know what I'm saying? So any final thoughts from you two? Go for it.
Well, I mean, I really appreciate the discussion because I wanted to find out what you guys thought, especially E-Way, because I was like, oh no. The fascism part, and I said, oh no. But I really think that the more I hate that more people can't be in your pod, so to speak, to talk about some of these things, because if we don't work on stopping foolishness like this, you know, ignorance spreads and knowledge hides. And it's unfortunately that you have to seek out knowledge to find it, right? But ignorance, you don't have to work very hard for it. It just gets spreaded. And the more and more and more that the information goes out, and it's misinformation, it's misleading, it's half of the story, it's not being, you knowing the answer. We all know that you're such a scholar that you know all this information and you're leaving things out. Then a lot of people are going to be left out on the truth. But that's the purpose, right? So that we don't know as much. They don't expect people to have, and again, when I look at DJ Envy face and all that, the kind of audience that listens to the Breakfast Club is probably not always the audience that he thinks that he needs to be attending to, right? He thinks these are people who are probably just into music and perpetually brain dead in his mind. He's not thinking about the other people who are actually listening to him. And that's a part of the scheme. That's a part of that is a part of the plan, right? To get the people who can't think for themselves and convince them that they can think for them and therefore give them correct information. So I appreciate you for putting that out there. Those are my final thoughts. Sorry.
All right, Mr. E. Wade.
All right. So I could begin with a bunch of things, but really my final thoughts are, man, like, this is again why we have to really take back blackness. This is insane. And for someone like this, like Larry Elder, being a token in terms of just him as a token and just like saying all this shit, leaving this stuff out. And this is why we need black radicalism in the mainstream, or some attempt at pitting some sort of black radical energy against this type of shit. And ultimately, it does come down to our rejection of the state itself, the racist capitalist class, and their multicolored rainbow petty bourgeoisie that people like Larry Elder, Jim Clyburn, Barack Obama, Tim Scott, and all these other sorry ass motherfuckers are part of. So yeah, again, we got this. This is why taking back blackness is so important. This is why actually understanding our history in regard to this system, in terms of its own evolution, because every economic system is born, evolves over time, and dies. Capitalism, born.
Yep.
It's evolved over time. Let's see. Can you tell me what the last step is?
Exactly.
Like, the amount of capitalist realism in this country, that this is the greatest system that could ever be created. Nothing can keep this system. Nothing can stop this system. It's the best. It's number one. Like Larry and Vivek and all these other motherfuckers. It's like, yeah, these systems are born, evolve over time, and die.
Exactly. And history has proven that time and time and time again. But shoot, once again, I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna try to set up another time for next week, and I'm gonna try to set this up to where we can get people, like-minded individuals, to join the Discord so we can further this discussion and other topics in the future. So, but once again, I appreciate you guys.